It is time for the Sunday start where we get something or give something to get us started to take on our week. And I used to travel a lot for a living, so I spent a lot of time in hotels. And one of the things that they ask you when you check in at your hotel is, would you like a wake up call? And if you're smart, you probably would say yes, because even if you plan, even if you have your own alarm clock or you use your phone or whatever they use to wake up, it's always good to have a backup. Now, what does this mean in our daily lives? There are things that lull us to sleep. There's a lot of things in with regard to entertainment. There are things that with regard to things that are going on in the world, current events, and all of that. There are matters of pleasure, food and drink, and all of these things conspire to lull us into a false sense of security. But something or someone has to engage to help you wake up. And that's where this particular segment comes in, because there is always something out there that can wake you up. Now there are distractions. There's noise. I know, like when I stayed in hotels a lot. For example, if I was on in Manhattan, even at a high floor, you could still hear a lot of street noise. And unless you were conditioned to hear that, this noise might keep you up, keep you from sleeping. Because, see, here's the thing, the wake up call is not to wake you up at a time that is not appropriate to wake you up. Because, see, there's a time that you need to be sleeping and a time that you need to be resting. Your body needs that. But the wake up call comes to wake you up at the appropriate time, not to jar you out of your sleep, but to gently remind you that it's time to get going. So when you're in some places, there's a lot of noise that may conspire to keep you awake. Sometimes you have noisy neighbors in your hotel. If you guys have spent any time in hotels, you know exactly what I mean. And so there are times when that noise may wake you up. So don't let the excitement of others wake you up before your time. The other thing is that uh, sometimes there are events. I don't know if you've ever been in a hotel where there's been a legitimate fire or a legitimate emergency, but I have. And sometimes those things happen. Now you have to be prepared to react to those things because they do happen. But when those things jar you out of your sleep, it is for your own best interest. And so sometimes there are going to be things that show up in your life that wake you up at a time when you may not think it's appropriate. But if your life is in danger or your livelihood is in danger, that's something you may have to take this into consideration in order to be awakened. And I say all of this to say that in order to get started in your week, in your day, even, you have to first be awake. Because if you are asleep, you're not going to be functional. Now, you might be alive and you might even have a form of consciousness, but you have to be awake in order to be effective. And that's a big issue with society today, with the world today, is that a lot of us, again, we have been lulled to sleep by different things. And so we're sleeping when we should be awake. And then as a result, some people are getting overly excited at inappropriate times, or they're being jarred awake, and they awaken us at inappropriate times. And so you have to learn to discern the difference. So one of the things that I want to say about getting started for the week is that I hope that this weekend has been restful for you. One of the things that was a challenge for my wife and I, as our kids were coming up, is that there were a lot of activities that happened over the weekend, particularly around sports. And so we had to get up and we had to get prepared, and we had to take sometimes very long trips in order to support their efforts. Now, as a result, there were a lot of times when we probably were not getting the kind of rest that we needed, even though we would stress that our kids got rest, that they were rested, that they slept, they went to bed on time, and they got up at the right time so that they would be at their most effective during their game day. But a lot of times we would be struggling, I mean, dragging, trying to sort it out. And that's sometimes that happens. But the reason why I bring this thing up about rest and weekends is that if you're not working on the weekends, if you're one of the typical 9 to 5 people who do their work Monday through Friday, you have weekends off. And so there are two things that you need to do on the weekend, I think, to really balance out your life. One is you make sure you get enough rest. You gotta rest. You have to take time to decompress. You have to walk away from what you're doing. It was interesting for me that in my regular career, that between February and July, I didn't have a weekend off. And so I was incredibly stressed out. I was incredibly tired. My sleep schedule was all over the place. I'm dealing with people in different time zones all over the globe, and it was difficult. It was challenging. But when the opportunity came for me to rest, I decompressed. I took, I stepped away from most of my activities, and just slept. Or, I vegged out on the sofa. I didn't even write. Nothing. No phone calls, nothing. I just really decompressed. And periodically, you need to do that. Because if you are not sleeping well, or if you're not well rested, that when it's time to wake up, in other words, it's time to be effective, it's time to get active, it's time to get busy, you won't be able to. And you'll struggle. And this is the interesting thing, is that when you are not rested, you're not effective. And people will tell you, fake it till you make it. But I'm going to tell you something. There's only so long that anybody can fake it. At some point, the real is going to come out, and you're going to realize that, hey, I am operating without appropriate rest. Now, again, um, the wake up call is this, that there are things that you must do to prepare. You have to awaken yourself first mentally. Now, I know that that sounds a little out of order, because some people will say you have to wake up physically first, but stay with me for a minute. If you wake up mentally before you wake up physically, then when you get out of the bed, you are already getting up with the right mental acuity. You are already getting up in the right frame of mind. Why? Because you've taken the time to activate your faculties before you activate your physicality. So what happens is now you are prepared. And so when you wake up mentally, this means putting things in your mind that actually work toward forward momentum in your life. And there's a lot that will either cause you to stagnate, which is to remain still, or stuff that will drag you down and cause you to regress or go backward. And you don't want to do that. Life is all about moving forward and upward. And so you don't want to have anything that, number one, keeps you still, because again, the only things that remain perpetually still are those things that are either dying or dead. that they have no life in them. And what will happen is that if you choose to remain still, now how do you remain still? Number one, you remain still physically. You don't exercise. You don't move your body. You don't. There's no physical activity, so your body gets still. And if you're not getting busy living, you're getting busy dying, right? The other thing is what actually is in your mental faculties, your spiritual faculties, your emotional faculties. What is in there? What are you taking in? Because those things are the things that are going to move you forward in the non-physical realm. So again, you want to make sure, number one, reading. I used to stress this to my kids all the time. And I tell people who aspire to leadership or who are serving in a leadership capacity that readers are leaders. Either you will be a reader or you will serve someone who is. And that's the way the Tootsie rolls, y'all. Readers are leaders. You need to be stimulating your mind. Now, this is important because what you don't want to do is get stuck in a particular groove. If you are a nonfiction reader, read a novel or two. You need that. You need that stimulation to kind of break up your mental direction. You need to basically stimulate your intellectual faculties. Or if you are a novel reader, you cannot spend all your life in imaginary worlds. At some point, you have to come back to earth. So you have to find something that you can put in your mind that will break up the fantasy and bring you into a reality that helps you advance in life. And then the other thing is that there are some people that they get so caught up in spirituality. They're reading religious books or spiritual books, and everything is spiritualized. And listen, you cannot spiritualize everything. At some point, you have to get to some level of practicality. You have to have practical application for whatever it is that you're processing. Because if you have no practical application, that is the equivalent of being spiritually asleep. Because you're simply loading up on information that ostensibly edifies your spirit, but doesn't give you any practical application, nothing that you can use in real life. Then you have to do things, or let me better yet, let me say this. You have to say some things. People make a lot of they say a lot of disparaging things about affirmations. Listen, the result of your meditation should be an affirmation. If what you're meditating on does not cause you to affirm yourself, listen, you will have cheerleaders, you will have opponents, you will have coaches, and you will have spectators in your life. Everybody has them. But if you are not internally motivated, in other words, if you are not your best cheerleader, forward motion is going to elude you. You're not going to move forward. You have to find in yourself that which motivates you, that which gets you fired up. And I'll tell you something, right hand, I'm guilty. You know, I sometimes I look for my kids to cheer me on or my wife to cheer me on. And at the end of the day, that's not, I mean, well, let me put it this way. I won't say it's not their job, but they can't do it better than you can. You know you better than anyone else. You know what pushes your buttons. You know what motivates you more than anyone else. And so you need to affirm yourself to get yourself excited, motivated to do what is necessary. Then you have to do something physically. I can't stress this enough. Sometimes when I'm sitting and I'm working, I'll get up and I'll just do squats, or I'll get on the floor and I'll do push-ups, or I'll get on the floor and I'll do planks, or sometimes I'll do high knees or something like that. And to be honest, I don't do it with the regularity or the frequency that I should. I should be doing this a lot more than I do. But I try to make sure that I do some of it during the day because I understand the importance of motivating my body, to making sure that I have a wake up call for my body. Because I don't want to remain still, because again, those things that remain still are either dying or dead. They bodies in motion tend to stay in motion, and that's one of the laws of physics, and you need to apply that to your life. So, again, this is your wake up call. It's not the final wake up call, it's not the only wake up call. You will get different wake up calls. Just like how if you travel for a living, sometimes your wake up call is going to be a hotel employee, your concierge, or something like that, or it may be your loved one, your wife, your husband. You know, it may be your kids. It may be your iPhone or your Android phone. It may be the alarm clock in the hotel. Any number of things can wake you up, but you have to know what wakes you up most effectively, what wakes you up in such a way that it gets you started and gets you ready to do what you need to do. And I hope all of this is encouraging for you, and I would love to hear from you. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to go to my website at derekday.com, click the contact link, and follow all of the prompts to fill in the form, and it'll send me an email. Or you can reach me on Instant Messenger here on Facebook, or drop something in the comments. Drop a heart if this is something that's helping you, or a thumbs up, if it's helping you, or if you think it's bullshit, put a little poo icon on there, however it works for you. But I'm really hoping that you will apply the wake up call to your life so that you can get up, get busy, and be effective.